when I started having trouble sleeping, I talked to my doctor and I said, look, I know how this ends. I'm going to have trouble sleeping for a while. It's going to get worse. I'm going to get depressed. I asked her, should I start taking Prozac now? And she said, yeah, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, why don't you do that? Awful experience. You end up living thinking, okay, it's going to get dark. What am I going to do? How am I going to approach darkness? How am I going to approach the time to go to bed? Monster is everywhere. So many aspects of my life. I took a lot of decisions in the past 10 years when these things happen because of, am I going to be able to sleep or traveling? How am I going to sleep and stuff like that? And now it's the reverse. It's the reverse in the sense that this whole learning touched so much of my life. It's a learning experience. I feel like for other aspects in life now, I have a bigger toolkit.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Carlos with us. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know you, you responded to an email I sent inviting people to be guests, and so I'm very grateful for that. And you are a BedTyme graduate as well, and so we connected through those venues. But with that said, tell us in your words how did you start having trouble sleeping, Carlos?
I tried to write down a little bit my thoughts the last few days. I think it started slowly. But it started about 12 years ago, I think. It wasn't constant. It was on and off. In the beginning, it was kind of like just more disturbances. And it got worse, I think, in traveling time zones. That was the first time that I mentioned it to my doctor. And the usual, they gave me sleeping pills for the trips. And but the first time that I remember it to be bigger was in 2014, 2015. And I live in a very cold climate in the winter, so I started associating it with the winter, with darkness, with something like that. And then, so I would say I had, over the course of this time, 3 or 4 times in which it lasted a few months. But when it came, it was vicious. I ended up having anxiety, which I never identified as having before. And then got depressed. And in a way, I think it's a story that you heard many times. I think that I was kind of like a bookcase of what all of us who go through this do, right? And I started reading, I started what to do about this, and then I went doctor after doctor. I became convinced at times that there was something out there that I had to fix. And it would last, as I said, 2 or 3 months or something like that, and it would go away. And I wouldn't know why it went away. But maybe, something happened, it went away, that's it. But then it would come back.
And sorry to interrupt, Carlos, but just for the audience to know, like when it was those kind of vicious months that you had it, was it like sleepless nights, or was it like very choppy sleep, or what was it like?
Yes, there were sleepless nights, and it was choppy when I could sleep. There were some times in which I would fall asleep and I wake up 4 or 5 hours later, just startled, right? But yes, I had a lot of sleepless nights those times.
And the days
I would end up, there were a few times in which I had a couple of sleepless nights. I went, like many people I heard on the channel, many people, I went to ER a couple of times, just give me something, I want to sleep now. And I developed health anxiety. That was something that came with it. I don't know if I should jump forward. I'll say one thing of jumping forward is that last year around September or October, I sent you a message, and I was going through one of those, and I was having huge health anxiety. And my health anxiety in general was with blood pressure. My blood pressure is going to go higher, and this and that. And anyway, I'll go back to what I was saying. But that was the health anxiety that came a lot of time. I was always very plugged in when it happened, was always kind of like looking for something. But and looking for something means not just the web, right? I ended up with like journal of mental issues, journal. I mean, I go into the papers and see what, and I tried, of course, CBT a couple of times. But every time it went away. And most of the times, like at the beginning, I didn't have an answer of what happened until I think it was 2019. It happened. And again, it was going away. And I was in fear still. I was going away, but I had still fear. Would it come back or not? And I came across the whole issue of vitamin D. And that was the next thing I grabbed onto. And I started taking vitamin D, and that made me lose the fear. So I said, I got it. This was it. This was it all along. That's it. I got it. Until last year. So it was like 3 or 4 years that I didn't have, and I didn't went away. It came back. And exactly at this time last year, it was July, August last year. And it came back, and it wasn't that bad. I mean, it came back like, I think I was waking up very early is what happened. And I made a big, either, I don't know if a mistake or not, or the opposite, because I said, I'm going to fix this. Now I'm really going to fix it. And my wife was out of the country. So I said, okay, I'm going to try sleep restriction. I'm going to do it well. And one reason I think that I'm cut up for these kind of issues is that I'm very disciplined. And if you tell me, I mean, this is what I have to do, I will do it. And that's the worst, as I learn it now, for CBT. So from something that wasn't such a big deal, waking up early, then I couldn't fall asleep. When I did sleep restriction, I couldn't even fall asleep. But I wasn't having that before. And I was following, I started searching again. Martin Reed came up. So I was looking at videos and reading about CBT again. And with the whole thing, all right, this is the gold standard. This is the way to go. I'm going to try again. And then I don't know how it happened. From on YouTube, from Martin Reed's videos, your videos appeared. And at first I was confused because I think I caught some of your earlier stuff. So CBT-ish stuff. And I didn't understand for a while what the message was. And then I started sort of understanding. And one of the silver linings of the insomnia for me was that among the tons of things, I'm not describing exactly everything I've done, but I've done everything that people do, so pretty much. It was started meditating. I started meditating about 10 years ago. And I really got into like the Buddhism approach and stuff like that. I say it's a silver lining because even if it didn't help me for that, it was something that stuck with me. And I think it was a nice addition, let's say. Now, at some point, listening to you and reading the books, it started clicking like it was the same thing. I wasn't getting that message from the general acceptance from mindfulness or the Buddhist approach and stuff like that. but it was the same. It was an application of the same thing. So I was kind of ripe for that. So I learned your concepts of, okay, I was this past 3 years, between 2019 or 4 years until now, I was in a truce. It was, that was clear. And so everything started clicking, but I was still fearful that how am I gonna be going through these health fears that I have? How am I gonna befriend wakefulness with this? I'm not gonna be able to do it. So I need to solve it now. I cannot not solve it just right now. And again, last year it was awful when it happened. And for example, one thing that happened was that when I started having trouble sleeping, I talked to my doctor and I said, look, I know how this ends. I'm going to have trouble sleeping for a while. It's going to get worse. I'm going to get depressed. I asked her, should I start taking Prozac now? And she said, yeah, it wouldn't hurt. Why don't you do that? Awful experience. I lasted for, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks. It was worse. My anxiety was much worse. I know in the beginning it's supposed to sometimes, but I said, well, this is not it. So I talked to her again, dropped it. And they gave me something else to get by, to sleep, which I took for a little bit. It was mirtazapine. I took mirtazapine. They gave it, okay, after a few days, which wasn't more than a week, I cut it in half. I didn't want to get hooked on that. I started cutting in half. Then I would have trouble sleeping again. I was very, very hit and miss by then. And then I joined BedTyme. I started talking to Chris. And for a while, it was going well. Then I wasn't, and stuff like that. And Chris kept on saying, well, it's not going to come back. He says, you go in the right direction. You know too much. And I was thinking, I know what? I know, but I cannot do anything. What do I do? And then it started getting better. And it's hard to describe, but things that happened were, for example, I had your words on my mind of, by the time that you say, okay, I'm in a situation, I could live with this. I got to the point. It wasn't that I started sleeping well. I started like, it's okay. And then, I don't know, I sent you a message saying, well, maybe I should be a guest. And then a few days I didn't sleep. No, I'm going to hold on. I'm not ready. So I kept on going like this. Should I be or should I not be? And things kept on improving in that way. So maybe I'm going to anticipate some of the questions that you might have, because I thought a lot about things like where people say that insomnia goes away through the back door, that is not one day. On one hand, I feel that is true. On the other hand, looking at when it happened, is it night and day? Because in the end, so I was so fearful of speed bumps. And I feel now, going back to meditation practices, there are opportunities to practice. So if I have a speed bump right now, it's kind of like, it's going to be another one. I had so many that each of them reinforces the fact that they go away.
Yeah.
There's another time in which I'm going to learn this goes away. Another time that I'm going to not look at the outside world to solve my issues. At the beginning, I told you when, before I had the insomnia, before I had the first episode of anxiety due to the insomnia, I never knew what anxiety was. I used to say, like, when people talk about anxiety, how does it feel? I don't know. At that time, I said, okay, now I know. And now I know that maybe I had it before, even if I didn't know, because that was what made me create this. And I'm talking to Chris, there was one thing, and with all the your guys' teachings and stuff. One day I came up with a um, sort of a visual metaphor that was, I remember, I don't know if you remember a story of Michelangelo, that there was a story of Michelangelo that somebody says, "Oh, you're such a great sculptor." I said, "I don't do anything special. I mean, the marble already, this figure was already inside. I just had to take what it was covering it." And I was thinking, what we do is the opposite. We create a monster out of our punches. It's like we fight an existent monster, and the monster starts taking shape out of that. And so I think it was, on one hand, it was the message clicked because I was already going around it, your message, but it's not immediate.
Yeah, totally.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's a slow process, but it's a slow process in which it can be taken as a learning experience.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here and share a couple of comments. But what you said there, lastly, I think is so valuable because one thing I heard actually very recently from one of our students was, Daniel, I hear a lot of guests on your channel. They say let's call it the recovery process. It took several months or a year, and they say, I don't know how I can possibly go through that. And my point is that I say, sort of, you said that, yeah, when people describe that the recovery process took several months or even a year, that doesn't mean that there was a year of struggle. That means that it was oftentimes a year of learning, right?
Yeah. But yeah, getting to that point is the point. As I said, when I was thinking, I need to solve it now, to a thing, I don't need to solve it now. I don't need to solve it now, which gets mixed up with there is nothing to solve.
Yeah.
One example that I had all along was my wife. My wife has trouble sleeping many times. She doesn't pay attention to it. And the day after, she goes to sleep like nothing happened, and life goes on. And then, so I couldn't do that, right? Um, I have an academic background, so my studies became, I would read about insomnia, about depression, about anxiety. I need to learn it all. I need to solve this. And I was just listening to your Q&A from recently. Well, as we are taping this from yesterday. And I don't know. I mean, it's to say, I was just listening. Every now and then I listen to the stuff. Still, I like kind of feel part of the community. And I was thinking, it's such a simple idea, such a simple message, such a the solution is so close to us, but it's not. That doesn't mean that it's easy. That doesn't mean that it's easy to internalize. You were talking about what does it mean to not do anything. When you say to people, you don't have to do anything. Well, what does it mean not to do? We are doing something. That's why I got to learn this stuff, because I did something. It's a little bit of a paradox in which is not. I mean, I think we are trapped of the in the language here. It's not do something. It's acceptance. It's like being okay with the way it is, and being not project to I mean, I cannot sleep now, therefore I won't be able to sleep later. I won't be able to sleep tomorrow. So that's what creates the anxiety, right? Another thing that it might be a question that you are gonna ask, and I thought about this a lot, is what did you say to yourself at the beginning, or are you happy it happened? For a while, I thought, I no, I'm gonna have to say no. No, I would have preferred for it not to have happened. Only very recently, I cannot change the stance on that, I think. I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago, explaining to her this whole thing. She knew part of it, but I was going through more. and it touched so many aspects of my life. I took a lot of decisions in the past 10 years when these things happened because of, am I going to be able to sleep or traveling? How am I going to sleep and stuff like that? And now it's the reverse. It's the reverse in the sense that this whole learning touched so much of my life that in a way made me more sensitive, made me more aware of me, of the present moment, um, so I'm closer. I mean, closer to say, I would have preferred not to have suffered, but we all do, right? So not to have suffered, but it's easy to say now. I mean, I can see myself listening to this video a few years ago. Somebody listening to this now say, "You're saying that because you don't have the fear," but it's a learning experience.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this. And yes, you know this you know very well how I typically have those two questions saved for the end. But I was just going to highlight something you said, which I think is so true. You said like we're trapped in the language, and I believe that very much. That the tool we have to our disposal to communicate is really language, like spoken language, written language, like body language. Language in some shape or form is how we humans communicate one with another. And some things are so difficult to communicate using language, like this even the concept of, like you said, not doing anything. It's really about acceptance, right? Difficult things are happening to us, but we accept that they happen, right? But the follow-up question from someone struggling then will say, like, well, what do I do to accept? How do I do acceptance? And then again, you're back in like, well, acceptance is about, like, when things happen to you, you let them happen, and then they can be follow-up questions that, how, give me instruction, give me a prescription. So again, it's there's a limitation to language there, that I think is so true. Which again, so how do we get around that? Well, I guess it's something about like experiential learning, that when you intellectually start to understand that, doing less, letting go, acceptance is what's going to help me, then it maybe starts happening, and then you experience that, and then it kind of sinks in a little deeper. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it at this moment. But what do you think? Does that part make sense to you?
Yes, except, I mean, one of the things I didn't understand when I started meditating was that one of the instructions, at least in the style that I started doing, is, okay, choose a position, sit comfortably, and then don't move anymore. Yeah, but I get a numb leg and it itches here. And I never understood in the beginning why. Why can't I just move? If something bothers me, just move. And one day I understood that it is a practice that to be okay with the discomfort. I mean, it's if you're gonna break a leg, for example, you have, okay, yeah, change it. But if it is a discomfort, it's like wakefulness, right? There is no problem. There is no problem because it's a learning experience. Because in life, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to change. You're not going to be able to change by moving a leg. So it's the not do anything is I don't know. It's more not. Don't try to control everything. Don't try to force things. One thing I learned with this is that one of my biggest problems was control. Right? And you tell me sleep restriction, go to bed at this time, go wake up at this time. That's it. That solves my issues. I'm gonna be able to control it, and it doesn't work for some people.
Right.
Some people, but yeah, I mean, it's like a different thing. It's not just don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
that's
I
why
was
I
going to
say
ask you.
click something. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to ask you another thing, which was, first a little comment actually. As you point out, if we listen to all the stories we have on our channel, like yours, we can see that it's all really the same elements. They're all there, very similar. But there can be some details that are a bit different that can be helpful to highlight. And in your story, what I thought I wanted to highlight was most people, I think, will identify this one particular stressor or really stressful period in their life when it all started. Like they became a parent, they had a big health scare, something like that. What in your story, it was more diffuse. It sounds like you can't pinpoint like this one particular stressor where it all began, and I think that's helpful to point out, because some people may hear the maybe more usual story and think like, oh no, my story is different, I can't point out to a big stressor, it started more insidiously. But that's also quite common. So just want to comment on that. Anything to add to that one, Carlos?
Well, I had one thing that pretty much everybody has. That is, my case was the worst. That was also, I mean, no, I'm it's hopeless and stuff like that. I had that. As far as if it was a stressor that started it, I didn't identify, but it started shortly after my dad passed. I don't know if the first time had to do with that. I never kind of like linked it directly, but some friends of mine identified that. Say, well, yeah, but that started when that happened. Um, it might be. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's it's a great point for many reasons. One of them being that we don't know. It could have been related to that, but even if it wasn't, I will say this just to somebody out there listening: if you can't really figure out exactly what it was or why it started, that's also not important, really. You know, it doesn't. You don't need to figure that out. The
One
other
thing
thing
I
I want,
one
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
sorry,
go.
you remember I told you that last year when it came back slowly, and I tried to fix it. There was another time that after years I realized I was reading a book um, about different philosophies of life, about the Stoics and stuff like that, and the author was saying, um, "Yeah, I was always so lucky to go to bed and fall asleep immediately," and that was something that stuck with me. Okay, I need to be able to do that. So those trying to control were sparks for me. I think more than stressors. So
Oh yeah, that's a very nice point. And sometimes we have that story. Like what that brings to my mind is the mom who's just had a baby or something like that, never had any problem sleeping, and the midwife says, "Well, now you're a mom, you have a little baby. Now it's very important that you sleep enough." Yes, there was a stressor, but it's more like the message that, oh, I got to sleep. That can also lead to a lot of struggle, then the pressure from there. Now, I want to ask you. You mentioned that some 10 years ago, it sounds like you really discovered like Eastern philosophy, you got into meditation, etc. And we also know from your story that it was the insomnia part was like a couple of months. It was really really difficult, and then it kind of like mysteriously went away. Now, during these times where you didn't really struggle with sleep, did you keep practicing the meditation and etc.?
yeah, that's why I said this was a silver lining, because I like the practice and independently from that. So it started
Yeah,
because of that, but
yeah,
it became part of my life independently from the insomnia.
yeah. Very very nice. I thought so too. And okay, you had a very nice analogy that you shared before, talking about how for Michelangelo it was this like there was a slab of marble, let's say, and he said the sculpture's already in there. I kind of just removed marble to reveal it, if you will. And
Mm.
insomnia, it's almost the opposite. It's like our punches create the monster. Now,
Yeah.
for somebody who's tuning in here, it's like, what does he mean? Like, what is? Can you give an example of what is a punch in this analogy?
Um, Magnesium. I could name a lot of things that we do, but the fight is the fight, right? I need to fight this. I don't accept. I don't accept this.
Yeah,
And there are a lot of things in life that probably could be much worse, not to the more difficult to accept. Serious illnesses, right? I mean, family losses and stuff like that. That this is something that we cannot sleep one night, and I we get in full um, fight or flight mode.
Yeah, no,
So it creates a whole behavior. It creates we creates the fact that we have a lot of weapons. Like I said, I could name um, sleeping pills, magnesium, hours that we do, curtains, um, warm water. I mean, doing a lot of things. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people that listen to this are gonna understand, and you heard this many times. But you end up living thinking, okay, it's gonna get dark. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna approach darkness? How am I gonna approach the time to go to bed? Uh, so they invited me to this thing. Should I go? At what time am I gonna be able to go to bed? I need to sleep. Um, so it's a constant fight.
Yeah. No,
It's like
well
the
said.
monster is everywhere.
Yeah, it becomes everywhere. Now you already shared it very nicely how, up until recently you would have probably said, I would have preferred not to go through this because it was really, really difficult. But now perhaps I can see that maybe there's quite a bit that I've taken from this that is quite valuable. In light of that, are there, aspects of, you've actually already touched on this, but I think it's a nice question, so I'll ask you again. Are there other areas of life where you feel like what you learned from going through this struggle with sleep has made, has changed has changed your life in other areas, if you will?
Um, yeah, I mean, many ramifications. I tell you one. So I started going to, so I meditate, started going to a meditation place. One day, there was an old man that needed a ride. I gave him a ride. My wife said, hey, he needs a ride. He goes in direction of our house, so we gave him a ride. And then we gave him a ride again next time, again next time. At the end, times in which I didn't need to go or something, I would go pick him up and bring it to the place. I ended up developing a relationship with him. This was at the time he was 87 or 88. His wife just passed. He, in his working life, he was a therapist, and he got into a depression when he was 80 and started meditating. And in the end, he couldn't go move anymore. So I ended up visiting him once a week and just having chats with him. It became a big part of my life, this relationship. So he just passed a month ago at the age of 90. He was going to he was 90. He was going to turn 94 in mid-August. So that relationship was a very important relationship for me. And I'm saying things like this I can pinpoint, just like I made decisions, as I said before, because of insomnia. It's hard to say. It's like all of our experiences shape us also, right? So that was something that I gained, let's say, because of the search, because
Yeah.
of the and introspection, right? Introspection to understand our anxieties, to in a way becomes a sort of a therapy. You end up knowing yourself more. It happens to me many times that when I hear now people saying, "Yeah, I have this insomnia," stuff like that. I'm very careful with the word right now, right? With what you always say. I mean, one thing is a sleep disturbance that everybody has. The other thing is insomnia. But it's not just, I mean, the fact that whoever gets into this insomnia pattern is not just that, right? So we have a certain approach to things that could be beneficial for some things, and for some things it's not beneficial. So I don't know. I mean, it's I would say that my answer probably now, it might change next week. It was different probably a while back. Are you happy, happy or not? And I would say it's part of me, right? It's part of myself. So it was something that it could happen because of the way um, I approach things, or I learn things, or I behave, and it's all a learning process, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, knowing about CBT, I liked it a lot, right? So learn about the different psychology, and then more recently, last year, when I started getting into your teachings, I read Steve Hayes' like ACT uh, approach, and it makes a lot of sense, right? That somebody takes CBT and say, well, why don't we change the point of view instead of like focusing on behavior and again controlling, solving things by controlling, we try to approach with acceptance.
Yeah.
So um, I, I feel like for other aspects in life now, I have a bigger toolkit.
Yeah. Yeah. Super
So
nice. Yeah.
don't take like the clouds for granted, right?
Yeah.
This is something like this old man that became my friend. And sometimes I would go. He was in his room. He couldn't move. He couldn't see from one eye. I would get there. I say, "Hey, Boris, how are you doing?" Very happy. He was very happy. He was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing better." And he was.
Amazing.
We would talk, and then I'd say. And one day I asked him, "Do you get bored? How am I gonna get bored? Look at the sky. How am I gonna get bored?" So it's not easy sometimes, but it's easy to go through life without noticing.
Yeah.
Easy. And I think before I was going through life more in that automatic pilot way,
Yeah.
uh, without noticing the good and the bad, right? Um, so these are all, yeah. I mean, it's hard to think what it would have been without. I mean, it would have been different. I'm not saying better or worse, but I think it touched a lot of aspects.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, thanks for sharing that super nice answer.
And
And
one thing to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
say, one thing I have to say is I don't understand how the medical profession is taking so long. How you have to do this. It's such a simple message. It's so powerful. Just like I don't understand how people thousands of years ago could say, okay, my mind um, is tricking me. Well, that's another thing that I was thinking yesterday or today. I was listening to one of your Q&A, and I was thinking of that idea of which another thing I could add to the answer to just your question was I learned not to believe my mind so much. How you can get uh, tricked all the time. So, but yes, I mean, I'm very grateful to you guys. I mean, the way um, you take this and you package it in a way that is very powerful.
Super glad you found us, and that's been so helpful, and for you sharing all this wisdom. And you know, on this is interesting because I just discussed this with my wife yesterday. Like, why is it that the establishment is really not offering much more than something kind of prescriptive, like, well, do this, take this, etc., etc. And maybe it becomes sort of like a meta thing here, that as a practitioner, if you imagine, like, you have a patient come to you and says, I'm having all this belly pain, and I'm not regular anymore, and as a practitioner that this person is actually anxious, right? This stomach pain is related to how they're feeling. The hardest thing for you to do as a medical practitioner is to say, let's talk about your emotions and how you meet your emotions, and etc. Because that, in you as a practitioner, you are now on like uncertain ground. You don't know where this is going to go. This is uncomfortable for you. So it's in some way to escape your own uncertainty and anxiety. It's easier for you to say, take this pill. Let's do this
Mhm.
test. So, and so it becomes very meta in that way, that we're in some way, all of us are prone to kind of this like escape the difficult thing. And this is one reason I think why the medical establishment isn't really that eager to change, if you will. And I think this understanding they have that in ACT or ACT as well, because my wife is studying a lot ACT, and they seem to have that understanding there as well.
Yeah, I think very simple.
It's very similar to what we believe and teach here. Very similar, very nice. So for anyone out there,
you direct the message, right?
Yeah,
I mean, to
say
me,
that again. Say that again, Carlos.
It's powerful the fact that you guys direct the message, because, as I said, it doesn't sound like it's like you're not inventing anything, but you're taking stuff that is out there and saying, look, I mean, you can approach it this way. That's why I'm saying, why does it take it so long? Because it's not that, right, you're discovering like this new immunotherapy drug, right? It is there, but it's not directed for this, for insomnia or for anxiety in this way.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do the job of taking some similar teachings and apply it to my issue. I couldn't do that.
Yeah. I understand your points, and I think we'll see. But my hope, of course, is that in 10 years or something like that, there will be a real change, and like philosophies like ours and ACT, by the way, who's come like way further. I think it will be more mainstream and more available for people and so forth. But other than that, let's conclude here. It was super nice talking to you, Carlos. Thanks so much for being a guest, and be in touch.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
They say that the best things in life are free, and I truly hope that this free video helps you rediscover something else that is free, which is peaceful sleep. If you do find our content here helpful, then please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it with people, because the more views we get, the more people we reach, the more chances of changing lives we have. The thing is, leaving insomnia for good is actually so simple. You can and will rediscover a beautiful life at the end of this sleepless tunnel. So yes, please share it with people, hit the subscribe button, and you will be a big part of leading the change that we so want to see in the sleep universe. Thank you.